Something shifts the moment the noise around starts getting louder than the thoughts inside. Not louder in volume, but louder in pressure. Messages, looks, passive comments, little digs wrapped in jokes. Those things start stacking up. At first, it feels like something needs to be said. Like there's a need to clear things up, defend the position, explain intentions. But here's the part nobody likes to admit. Most of that pressure isn't about truth. It's about control. People pull, not because they care, but because reactions give them something to work with. The more explaining happens, the more material gets handed over. That's how the game starts. Not with some big moment, but with small, repeated situations where silence would have shut it down, but words kept it alive. And once that pattern sets in, it becomes expected, like a button that gets pressed just to see the response. Then comes the realization that not every situation deserves a reaction, even if it feels personal. Some people rely on the idea that discomfort will force a response. They count on that urge to prove a point or fix a misunderstanding. But the truth is, a lot of those misunderstandings are deliberate. Someone already decided what they think, and no amount of explaining is going to change it. That's the trap. Trying to correct someone who benefits from seeing things raw. And while all that energy is spent trying to set the record straight, the other side just sits back and watches the effort unfold. Silence, in that moment, doesn't mean weakness. It means recognizing the setup. It means understanding that not every accusation needs defense, especially when the goal was never clarity in the first place. There's also the uncomfortable part, where stepping back makes others uncomfortable. When reactions stop, people notice, not in a respectful way at first, but in a suspicious way. Questions start coming in different forms: indirect comments, jokes, little tests. It's like they're checking if the same buttons still work. And when they don't, the tone changes. Some get louder, some get colder, some try new angles. That's when it becomes obvious how much of the interaction was built on getting a reaction. Not connection, not understanding, just reaction. And when that stops, the whole dynamic starts to collapse. But here's the catch. That collapse doesn't feel peaceful right away. It feels tense. It feels like something is about to happen. That's because people aren't used to not having access like before. At some point, there's a choice to stop managing how others feel about everything. That doesn't come from confidence at first. It comes from exhaustion. Being tired of overthinking every word, every message, every silence. Tired of wondering how something will be taken. That level of control isn't sustainable. And honestly, it was never respected anyway. People who benefit from confusion don't reward clarity. So the shift happens quietly. Less explaining, fewer corrections, shorter responses. Not out of attitude, but out of self-respect. And that's when things start to reveal themselves. The ones who were there for a real reason stay steady. The ones who needed constant access to thoughts and reactions start acting different. That difference says more than anything that could have been explained before. Another thing that becomes clear is how much projection plays into everyday interactions. People throw out assumptions based on their own habits, their own mindset. If someone lies a lot, they expect others to do the same. If someone manipulates, they assume manipulation everywhere. And when there's no reaction to those projections, it frustrates them because they can't confirm their own narrative. That's why silence feels like resistance to them. Not because it's aggressive, but because it doesn't fit their version of reality. And when that happens, they often double down, trying harder to get something, anything, that proves them right. But staying steady too, that isn't about proving them wrong. It's about not stepping into a role that was already written without consent. There's also the part where staying calm gets misunderstood as not caring. That's a big one. People are used to emotional reactions being a sign of importance. So when those reactions disappear, they assume the connection wasn't real. But that's not always true. Sometimes it just means there's no longer a willingness to perform emotions for the sake of keeping things comfortable for others. Caring doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to engage in the same patterns that kept things messy. And that kind of calm can make others uneasy, especially if they rely on emotional responses to feel in control or reassured. Then there's the pressure to go back to how things were. It doesn't always come directly. Sometimes it's subtle. Comments about changing, or reminders of how things used to be easier. What's really being said is that the old version was more predictable, easier to deal with, easier to influence. Growth doesn't feel good to everyone around, especially not to those who had things figured out in a way that benefited them. So there's this quiet push to return to that version. But once the pattern is seen clearly, it's hard to unsee, and going back starts to feel more uncomfortable than staying in this new space, even if it's unfamiliar. Another hard truth is that not everyone deserves access to the full picture. Not everyone needs to understand every thought, every decision, every move. That idea that everything has to be explained comes from wanting to be seen as fair or reasonable. But fairness doesn't always get returned. Sometimes it gets used. Oversharing becomes a tool others use to predict behavior, to find weak points, to build their own narratives. Keeping things simple, keeping things limited, that's not secrecy. That's protection. Not everything needs to be open for discussion, especially with people who have shown they don't handle bad access well. Over time, there's a shift from reacting to observing. Instead of jumping into every situation, there's more watching, more listening. Patterns become clearer. The same behaviors, the same setups, the same outcomes. And with that awareness, there's less temptation to engage the same way. Not because of some rule or strategy, but because it just doesn't feel worth it anymore. The need to win arguments